I'll rest when I'm done. That's what one of my clients kept telling himself. He was running businesses dealing with tremendous financial pressure, sleeping maybe 2 or 3 hours a night, eating on the go constantly. And he was always connected with his phone and his laptop. But he just kept going until one morning he got up to go to work and couldn't make himself go. If you've been telling yourself that you're going to slow down once life finally settles down, I want you to hear this story because sometimes the warning isn't that you can't keep going. Sometimes you've simply gotten very good at ignoring how exhausted you already are. At the time, he was under tremendous pressure. Two of his companies had gone bankrupt. There were major business issues that he was having to deal with and navigate, and he felt like he had to handle everything on his own. That was something that was a challenge. He was constantly on the phone, on his laptop, eating on the run, whatever, whenever he could, and sleeping 2 or 3 hours a night. But this wasn't someone who easily asked for help. He was used to pushing through and doing things on his own, and his philosophy was, I'll rest when I'm done. The problem was there was always something else to do. There was always another call that needed to be made, another problem, another email, another decision to make, another responsibility. So he kept going until that very morning when going to work felt like something he simply could not do. Now, maybe your life, it looks different. Maybe you're not running multiple businesses. However, maybe you're raising children while working a full-time job. Maybe you're caring for aging parents. Maybe you're building a career, running a household, supporting a spouse, helping everybody around you. And somewhere along the way, you have started telling yourself, I'll slow down after this week. I'll sleep more when this project is over. I'll take better care of myself when the kids don't need me as much. I'll rest when things are calm. But here's the question. When exactly is that going to be? Because life has a funny way of replacing one responsibility with another. Now, in my professional experience over the years, one thing that I have noticed that prolonged stress, periods of stress, don't always show up as one dramatic moment. Sometimes the changes are subtle and much quieter. You might notice that you're more forgetful than usual, or you may have trouble concentrating and focusing. Things you normally enjoy don't feel quite enjoyable as they used to. Noise or interruptions can be very irritating. You might feel mentally foggy, or you may get plenty of sleep and still think, why am I so tired? Those experiences can happen for many different reasons. And I want to remind you that persistent and new or concerning symptoms are something that you need to discuss with an appropriate healthcare professional rather than trying to self-diagnose. So, regardless of the cause, I think that there's a valuable question we can ask ourselves. How long have I been expecting myself to function without enough recovery? Now, for this man I worked with, there wasn't one magic solution. And I think that's important because he needed support from appropriate professionals for different things, different symptoms that he was experiencing. But he also had to begin looking at the way that he was living. He couldn't go from pushing himself constantly to suddenly trying to fix everything overnight. It wasn't going to happen. So some of the changes were simple: making room for more rest, gentle movement, spending time away from the electronics, breathing and relaxation practices, paying attention to regular meals and the content of the meals, and allowing other people to help him. But there was another shift that was just as important. He had to stop believing that rest was something that he could only have after everything else was finished. I want you to think about this. So I'm not going to give you a checklist and tell you whether or not you're burned out. Instead, I want you to ask yourself, where in my life am I constantly telling myself I'll rest later? After this project, after this busy season, after the kids get older, after work settles down, after everybody else is okay? Because sometimes the problem with saying I'll rest when I'm done is that life is never completely done. There will always be another email. There will always be another responsibility, another person who needs something, another problem that could use your attention. So today, I want you to find one small place where you can stop postponing yourself. Maybe that's stepping outside for a few minutes, taking a quiet walk, putting your phone away while you eat or while you're making dinner, sitting quietly and breathing, taking a real break without trying to accomplish something during that break, or asking someone else for help. It doesn't have to be huge. You're not trying to completely change your life today. You're simply beginning to notice the pattern. The man I told you about wasn't weak. In fact, he had been strong for a very long time. But strength could not continue to mean endlessly pushing himself without making room for recovery. And maybe, that's something that you needed to hear today, too. You don't have to earn rest by finishing everything first. If you want to understand more about some of the deeper patterns behind exhaustion and overwhelm and feeling disconnected and not yourself, I explore these ideas further in my book. You'll find the link below. And if you'd like more conversations like this, where we talk about stress, overwhelm, and reconnecting with yourself in a practical way, subscribe and join me here each week.